All right, welcome back to another episode of the podcast we call The Unknown, the 46th episode. My name is Michael Volpe. I live in Chicago, Illinois, and that's where I report from. That's in Cook County, Illinois. And I write at michaelvolpe.substack.com, and you should get a subscription paid or free to my site. And my broadcast partner is Richard Lutman, who writes at lutman.substack.com, Luthmann.substack.com. You live somewhere around Fort Myers, Florida, which is in Lee County, named after Robert Edward Lee. And the July 4th is a terrible day for Mr. Lee. He not only lost at Gettysburg, but Ulysses S. Grant won at Vicksburg as well. And he chose to move towards Gettysburg rather than getting reinforcements to Vicksburg. And that might have changed the war. That was in 1863. Both happened on the exact same day. Now, there's all kinds of crazy things happening in current events. And one of them, we haven't done an Elon Files segment in a while. And so that's because he really hasn't had that many things happen. But recently, he started a new party. All right, so as I was saying, it's called the America Party, and the Democrats and Republicans have been the dominant party since the 1850s. We've had other parties like the Whigs and the Federalists that have gone away. We have other parties now like the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party, the Democratic Socialists of America. In fact, if you ever vote for president, you probably see like 8 or 9 names. Most of them get a percentage point or less. Andrew Yang, who ran, I think in 2020 for Democratic president, did a lot better than anyone expected. Then ran for mayor of New York City and did a lot worse than anyone expected. Started the Forward Party. That's in its infancy, but he may grow that. But he is not Elon Musk with his 220 million Twitter followers, 100% name recognition, I'd say, at least in the US. I'd say it's a long shot that anyone can pull this off, but I bet in like 2004, 2005, someone would have said it's a long shot that any other company can be a competitor car company to Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, and the foreign car companies. And in less than 20 years, that's exactly what Tesla is. Can you pull this off?
It's a long shot, Mike, and frankly, I don't think that he has the political acumen. He's great in business. He's a great engineer. That's what he is, and he's great at building things. But and as long as he does that and advances the ball, he's at his optimal. I don't think politics is the game for him, unless, of course, this whole thing with Trump is one big ruse, and we're all being played. That's the only way that I see that this is like something that's calculated. But this seems like a real, like a tilt at a window. First and foremost, Yang is out there doing this. He hasn't had much traction. These third parties, okay, fine. You've had parties that kind of grow out of issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Republican Party grew out of issues. It was an anti-abolitionist party.
Right.
It became the dominant party.
They weren't abolitionists, but they did their platform was to not approve any more slave owning states, which over time is an abolitionist party. But yes, the slavery was the issue that the Republican Party was
the Republican Party. But go back in history.
But for Musk, it is the debt and the deficit, which certainly is not the issue that rallies people the way that slavery did in the 1850s, 1860s. But he supported Trump. He voted for Trump. He gave Trump money. All kinds of resources. He made a bunch of speeches. But he was under the impression that in his second term, Trump would tackle the deficit and the debt, get us to a balanced budget. And the first thing he does is he passes what do they call it? The continuing resolution, which kept last year's spending in place, and then the big beautiful bill, which increases the debt limit by $4 trillion. And for Elon, he thinks he's worse than Biden on that issue. And the thing is, people who think this is a problem, like me, I don't think that they are framing it in a way that gets people to care because they're constantly saying we're going to go off a fiscal cliff. Well, that fiscal cliff hasn't arrived. But when Bill Clinton was president and he balanced the budget and actually got a budget
Yeah.
surplus, his GDP, the size of the pie, in my opinion, the most important economic number there is, grew by 3.8% per year average, 3.4% under Reagan. Since Obama, since this debt has really exploded, we've had 1 or 2 years out of it. So since 2008 to 2025, that the GDP has grown over 3%. It never grew over 3% in the first 4 years under Trump. It never grew over 3% in any of the 8 years under Obama, even though he inherited a huge recession. So you would think that the first positive year would be especially positive because you're making up for the losses. Never happened. I think Biden had it once, but that's only in response to COVID. And that is, in my belief, a direct result of all this added debt. When Clinton put out his economic plan, he said government debt drowns out business investment. If we reduce government debt, businesses will invest more. And that's exactly what happened. And that's one of the reasons why it grew at 3.8%. They have to make that kind of an argument that it's hurting you right now. Our growth is stunted. Do you know that we pay more in the interest on our debt than any other agents, even more than the defense budget? It's over $1 trillion a year. If you reduce the debt, that goes away. That's money spent in other places potentially, or that's an even greater reduction in the debt. He has to make that like an argument that gets people to see that right now this is hurting you, and here's how it's hurting you. If he doesn't do that, people don't understand why it's important that we have this big debt. That's my opinion.
You just said it. The core issue here is debt. And debt is not a blood boiling issue. Debt is not a sexy issue. How many porno movies do you know took place in an accountant's office? You know, that's
Right.
the problem you have here. It's something you're trying to sell something that is just no good.
Yeah,
you know?
but as Bill Clinton's chief strategist, oh my God, I'm forgetting the guy's name, but it's the economy, stupid. The guy who married, I'm sorry?
Who said that? Dick Morris?
No, not Morris. The guy who married Mary Madeline. James
Carville. James Carville.
Carville. Yeah. You have to show that it's an economic issue. You have to explain to people that all of this debt is making growth stunted, and that's why we haven't had growth in almost two decades. Look, the economy is always the number one issue. And if you can explain to people that until you get the debt under control, we're not going to have growth, they're not going to see it as being important. That's what he's got to do. But neither party cares about the debt. I think there is a way to create a party out of this, being reasonable and basically saying they both sold you out. They're both corrupt because they spend your money in a bad way. And you can, but will he? I don't know. But Musk is different than everyone else who tried a third party.
I'll tell you something very interesting, actually, that he's already breaking the law in the state of New York. There's actually a rule under New York state election law that says you cannot have the word America or American inside a party name. Many people believe that it's an unconstitutional law, that the First Amendment, it would not pass First Amendment scrutiny, that there should be a federal court case. Maybe Elon's the one to bring a federal court case to allow all these words like American and America that are barred in the state of New York from being attached to political parties. Maybe he's going to bring a federal court case to allow them to be there. That might be a positive thing. We'll see.
Right. Yeah. That's rather interesting. That they have that law. That sounds unconstitutional. But to wrap it up, do you think that Elon can do this? Do you think he can create a party that's viable? That
we're gonna wait and see. The question becomes, the most important voters in any election are the independents, right? And so that's the margin that everybody's trying to aim for. If he's consolidating independents in his own quote unquote party, then it becomes something that is very, very valuable. So you never know. He could be the difference maker in the middle. That's why, I'm a conspiracy theorist to that extent, to thinking that the Trump-Elon rift is for show. It's like pro wrestling. And the two are actually, quietly
I don't
aligned.
think it is. He has always said that debt and the deficit are a huge problem, and he no longer believes that Trump is going to do anything about it. He thinks he wasted 5 months largely working with Doggy. None of that stuff's going to be implemented. It has at the margins. Let's talk about Jeffrey Epstein. Government says that he committed suicide, as they've been saying all along, through two different presidents, and that there is no client list, as the government has said all along, through two different presidencies, two different presidents, three different presidencies, actually. However, that poses a problem for Pam Bondi, because she said the client list was on her desk in February. So here she is trying to spin her way out of that statement.
February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well.
All right. That's a bunch of nonsense. If there was no client list, you would have known. All right. So can I tell you what I think? One, that he did kill himself. I don't know why that's such a hard thing for anyone to believe. He was staring at life in prison as a pariah. Like, his days were over. And the same way that Aaron Hernandez killed himself, even though he had been acquitted, I think staring at life in prison isn't that helpful. I don't think there's a client list, and also the so-called client list, such that they have been released through previous criminal prosecutions, civil cases. Also, we should know, everybody's, if there's no client list, why is the woman in jail, Ghislaine Maxwell? Well, if you look at what they convicted her of, it was trafficking people to Epstein. They didn't present any evidence in that trial of anybody else. Now, we've heard of Prince Andrew. There's a Brunel is his last name. I think he's French, who has been charged with trafficking in, like, as an associate of Epstein in France or Spain, somewhere in Europe. He's been charged. I don't know where that case is going, but I don't think that Epstein, if he was sharing women, I don't think he saw them as clients. I think he saw that as a way to ingratiate himself with powerful people. So he never would view someone like Bill Clinton as a client. So, but MAGA's not going to accept that. They see this as like a grand conspiracy. You know what this reminds me of? Both the Kennedy assassination and the Tupac murder. People have almost romanticized this into something that it never was. People can't accept that Lee Harvey Oswald, a man who was stuck in his life, was going nowhere, decided that this was the way that he would be remembered, and he killed JFK. And people don't want to believe that Tupac was killed in some stupid turf war because he and his entourage got into a fight with some gangbangers who obviously took revenge later that night. They want to believe there's a grand conspiracy. And they want to believe that Jeffrey Epstein has created this elite pedophile ring. And once we uncover the whole thing, we're going to know who all of the demented, powerful people in the world are. And that's probably just not the case.
Well, Tupac was a dumbass who got shot. I'll agree with you there.
Well,
but I think that JFK assassination, there are a lot of unanswered questions there that are worth looking at. And I don't think really Harvey Oswald did it alone. Okay, that's on the forensics. But the same thing here with Epstein. Based on that medical report, the autopsy report for Jeffrey Epstein, the doctor's conclusion is that he had to have been a Cirque du Soleil performer to have killed himself in the way that it was claimed that he killed himself. Now, are there problems with that report? Maybe. Are there problems with the doctor's opinion? Maybe. But these are the types of things that I would expect for them to drill down on, especially in a case that's so controversial. Because you have the former president, your favorite president, Bill Clinton, getting on planes going down there. His FBI director, Louis Freeh, going down there. Stars of all walks of life heading down there. He even claims that Trump's involved with it, but Trump's not involved with it. And I put something out for Roger Stone that from
Mhm.
from last year that he explained the whole thing that's a hoax. They're just using it to attack him. But at the end of the day, what MAGA Nation really wants, and Laura Loomer was rabid yesterday that Pam Bondi has to be fired and this and that and the other thing.
I think Pam Bondi does have to be fired.
Well, no,
That's you. If you
oh,
go on Fox News
come
and say
on,
the
come
client
on.
list is on
Oh,
my
get out of
desk,
here,
there's
Mike.
no client list.
Get out of here, Mike. Come on. Pam Bondi's doing a great job, number one. And you're going to fire over an Epstein Island list? Come on. Everybody.
Or saying something that's clearly not true to
She
an
didn't say
audience.
something that was not true. She was responding to a question. Do you have the Epstein Island list? The file's on the desk. I'm reviewing it all.
If it's on your desk and then months later they say there isn't any, that's a huge problem. She's created this problem.
Like it happens in court every day. Every day.
Well, number one,
you got to understand, she's a great
Court is in front of a handful of people. Fox News is in front of basically the entire country has heard she said that.
Whoa. So here's my issue to you then, okay? If the issue is about that, it's not Pam Bondi that should be fired. Anybody should be fired. It should be the people within the FBI, the deep state, that set her up for failure.
She didn't know there was no client list.
When Kash Patel asked for all the files from the New York office, and they've been stonewalling the whole time, when the DC office, all these other places, find these idiots and terminate them immediately.
If you say the client list is on my desk, that means that you've seen a client list on your desk, all right?
No.
She knew what she was saying.
She has reason to believe that there's a client list in the file because she was snowballed. That was a snow job in February, and the deep state is still there. I'm disappointed that they haven't cleaned house more. I am disappointed they haven't got rid of all these idiots. And now with this new Supreme Court ruling yesterday that Trump can clean house in the executive branch, I think we're going to start to see it happen. So there's not going to be any more of this. I think Trump just has to clean house. And Pam Bondi and all the directors, the cabinet level positions have to clean house. They're empowered to do it now. So these things shouldn't happen because people below her actually set her up for failure. And this can't happen anymore.
Right. Okay. Well, then she should have figured out who they were by now. But anyway, you and I both were on the air shortly before the Combs verdict was read, and no one, not just us, no one got it right in the predictions. No one predicted that he would be acquitted on all charges except for the prostitution, which there's so much evidence. The movement. But look, I'm sorry. You do not.
You do 5 years of jaywalking in the feds, Mike.
Right? Yeah, it is. This is such an embarrassment for the U.S. Attorney's Office through two different administrations. And by the way, James Comey's daughter was either on the team or leading the team. But I've got up. You were more wrong than me, I'll say. You said that the defense was terrible. But from what I'm reading, this is from one of the jurors, the alternates, and what the alternate juror, like the two examples that he gave is prosecution witnesses whose stories didn't hold up on cross-examination. And I did say that they seem to be like in perfect position to make an argument that these witnesses are liars. If we caught them in this lie and that lie, how many lies did we catch them in? And I think that sold to the jury. And you said they needed to put on a big case. I think they saw it right. We've poked enough holes. We don't need to give you a dog and pony show. That they haven't proved this beyond a reasonable doubt, and we're not even going to put on a case. This didn't get to guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. What I have a problem with, as far as what the juror says, like he's talking about like a specific incident that this woman, Dawn Richard, testified to, and that she was caught, like it didn't make sense. I don't know if you'd say caught in a lie, but definitely the story was suspicious. However, the story itself is evidence of so little that what about the evidence showing his guilt? And they don't address that. And so it says to me that they just didn't believe the prosecution's case after they poked enough holes in it.
If you remember what I said, I was critical of what the defense did because where is P. Diddy today? Where's Diddy today?
He's in jail.
He's in MDC Brooklyn. He's going to be there until he's designated to a federal facility. He's going to go to a federal facility. He's going to do 5 years by the time everything is said and done. The reason why I said they did a poor job was he wanted the chance to walk out of that courtroom. Those lawyers weren't the ones to do it with him because they didn't put on a show. Arthur Aidala and maybe one or two other people in New York City could have put on the show that needed to be done and walked Diddy out of the courtroom. That's why I'm so critical of these people. When you have the money that Diddy has, go get the best guy and walk out of the courtroom. He's doing fine. He's going to do 5 years.
I think
he got denied bail. Mike, he got denied bail. You call us a win? No. He got denied bail by the judge because the judge is going to impose substantial time on him. He's going to be doing time.
5 years maximum for that crime.
Mike, do you want to do 5 years?
Well, he has a little criminal right. This is like
you basically went on Backpage. It's the federal equivalent.
I know, it's very jaywalk.
And ordered a couple of call girls from state lines.
Right.
And he's getting 5 years for it.
It's more significant because he's not just paying for prostitutes; he's flying them across the country. So it's like trafficking prostitutes, kind of. So it's a little bit more significant. No, it's
you got that kind of money. When you got the kind of money, a private jet's like a city bus, Mike.
Right.
Come on, you gotta be kidding.
I know.
That's the point that I'm making about this case. I think this is a loss. I think he should have walked out of the courtroom. He didn't have the right
he doesn't think it's a loss. None of his lawyers think it's a loss.
What the hell the lawyers going to say? The lawyers want to get paid. Oh, we did a shitty job.
Okay,
Sorry, Dave, you're still in jail.
All right, I agree with that. However, he seemed very happy. I would be if I was him. His lawyer said he got a standing ovation or something in prison. I mean, like they were blown away that he was able to beat the government. That rarely happens. All right. Tucker Carlson interviewed the president of Iran. I have no idea who this guy is. He's not significant. The Ayatollah is significant, but he is a mouthpiece. Whatever he says is the Ayatollah's thoughts. And talk about a softball interview. Well, let's not talk about a softball interview. Let's just watch how softball the interview is.
The whole region.
There are some large number of Iranian nationals living in the United States. Some have said they are, quote, sleeper cells. They are terrorists who are acting at the command of your government. Would you right now make a statement to Iranian citizens living in the United States not to commit acts of violence in the United States?
You see, these things you're telling me, this is the first time I'm hearing them from you or from anybody. The Iranians are known for their knowledge, for their science, for their courtesy, for being civilized. Have you seen otherwise from them? Any other kind of behavior from them, or any violent behavior? Has anybody ever seen anything from them? Yeah, as I said, this is what Israel is trying to put into your minds. They are propagating that Iranians might be capable of doing such a thing, but this is totally untrue, because by nature Iranians are pro peace and tranquility, and they're trying to actually to somehow impact the minds of the decision makers and the people of the United States, and to scare them into getting involved in a war in my region that is not going to ensure any kind of interest.
All right. This is like the anti-Bill O'Reilly interview. Now, this is definitely propaganda, but let me defend Tucker. He puts the guy on the spot. These are these are pretty tough. I don't think that Press TV, the Iranian propaganda channel, would be allowed to even ask that question. Has Iran ever tried to assassinate Trump? I don't think that they would be allowed to ask that question. The fatwa?
And there was no fatwa ever issued against a specific person in history.
Okay.
That's what their answer was. It's like, Mike, if you listen to the answers, they're pure and unadulterated bullshit. That's what they are. Mike, have you ever seen the Iranians do anything other than peaceful things? Why, yes. It's called the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, state-sponsored terror. Number one on the list for the past 50 years has been the Islamic Republic of Iran. Okay?
Right.
They have
Look.
sponsored every piece of terrorism that has happened around the world. Iran has had their hand in at least the
Right.
last 50 years. It is
All
a
right.
disgrace that Tucker allowed this man to continue with his spewing spout of bullshit. Really, he's lost all credibility in my eyes as a journalist. And at the end of the day, this goes to show that there's a woke right. And
Right.
Tucker Carlson is one of the standard bearers of it.
When you say there's a woke right, what does that mean?
That means that as crazy as the woke left is coming with
No, but what do you? If you're the woke right, what do you believe?
You have this crazy ideology that is anti. It's almost like anti interventionism. You know,
isolationist.
Isolationism. It's almost you've gone so far the other way. You're devoid of common sense. Like anything that entangles America anywhere is bad. Anything that would go and get rid of our sovereignty or touch on anybody else's sovereignty is bad.
Here are two other things that you believe. Number one, whenever there is a high-profile incident that looks like it's human error, your immediate response is the person responsible must be a DEI hire. I see that from the right all the time. Number two, it's your complete and utter like you look the other way on the clear facts, which is that regardless of how it's happened, white men dominate the C-suite. They dominate the upper echelons of the Fortune 500. They dominate the upper echelons of business. I think it's less than
there's a very hard strain of anti-Semitism there too.
Right.
And that's probably the most disturbing part. He has Holocaust deniers on Tucker Carlson. He has actual Holocaust deniers on his show.
Right,
and doesn't berate them. Tell get the hell off my show.
Right. As far as Tucker is concerned, we have a pattern here. Now he did, and look, he asked Putin some tough questions, but the same thing. When Putin was 20 minutes into some pseudo history rant, did you actually think that something that happened in the 1800s was a reason
No,
he
it was
attacked
like
Ukraine?
857 in Kiev he started. 857 in Kiev.
Yeah. Did you think that had anything to do with it? He wants to attack Ukraine because he's on record as saying the worst day in human history was the day the Soviet Union fell apart. And he wants to reconstitute. And if he can't reconstitute it, he wants to get as close as possible. Ukraine is a part of that. If he can take over the Ukraine, he gets closer to the former Soviet Union. That's why he attacked. It's not hard to understand. But he also had, I don't remember the guy, he's Martyr Made on Twitter, the guy who said that Churchill is a worse villain than Hitler in World War II, that somehow there was a way to diplomatically stop World War II. Complete and utter nonsense. That's part of his anti-war ideology that he has. He interviewed the guy from Qatar. We saw some of it where he's saying there's a drumbeat for war with Iran. There was never a drumbeat for war with Iran. And look, he said before the U.S. dropped a few bombs, he said if the U.S. gets involved, we're going to witness tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of deaths. Did we witness tens of thousands of deaths? No. So he's doubling down. Instead of saying, you know what, I got this one wrong, he's doubling down. He interviewed the guy from Qatar, a state sponsor of terror. He's interviewed the president of Iran, a state sponsor of terror. You know who he never interviewed? Anybody from the Ukraine. He never interviewed. Look, he doesn't
anybody
have
from Israel. He didn't interview anybody from Israel.
You do not have to, and by the way, Rogan was the same way. You do not have to interview Zelensky himself if he's unwilling. Either of the Klitschko brothers, both of whom speak good English, know the issues well, can present the Ukrainian side eloquently, would have done Tucker if asked. Vladimir asked Rogan, and he said no. And you're right, and it doesn't have to be Netanyahu, because I don't know if Netanyahu himself is willing, but you can, if Tucker wanted to, he could find somebody from Israel to present Israel's side. And this is now a pattern where in major conflicts, he's siding with Americans' enemies. Not siding, but he's doing interviews only with Americans' enemies.
There are plenty of people from Israel that would speak. Officials from Israel, ambassadors, everything. He could have got somebody.
Mm-hmm.
They would jump at the chance to talk to that audience. Come on.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, you're right. All right. So the last piece of current events, I'm not exactly sure what's happening here, but before we talk about it, let's play President Trump.
We're bringing back religion in our country, and we're bringing it back quickly and strongly. Because for America to be a great nation, we must always be one nation under God, a phrase that they would like to get rid of, the radical left. But Ben, I don't think we're going to let them get rid of that, right? We're not letting them get rid of that.
All right, so what's he doing? How Holy Trump IRS bows the president's crusade. What is the IRS
Trump
doing?
did is he promised in 2015, 2016, to the evangelicals and to the faithful that churches will have free speech, okay? And that there's something that's called the Johnson rule. The Lyndon Johnson, when he was back in the Congress in 1954, put forward a rule that churches could not get involved in politics. They couldn't endorse.
Right, now, before you go on, he reversed this rule. Well,
he didn't reverse the rule. He made an executive.
Hold on. What is the law? Why the people who supported the Johnson Amendment? Why did they think it was a good idea to not allow churches to get involved in partisan politics? Because
Lyndon Johnson was a scumbag, and if the pastors told the truth about Lyndon Johnson, he would have never gotten elected ever again. Let alone,
but he
that's
wouldn't be able to get it past if that's
the political truth of it. That Lyndon Johnson and a lot of these other politicians thought, okay, we want to stem the tide of this powerful, religious, conservative, honest group of people that want to see, good elected officials. But it's both sides of the aisle, Mike. Republicans and Democrats.
Okay.
They're very historic.
Now, it's not in any official government document. However, the term separation of church and state does come from a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote, and he knows a thing or two about the Constitution, or knew, he's dead now, but he knew a thing or two, and he understood what the intent was, and he believed that church and state should be separated, and so this would do that. So you are going against what Jefferson felt was necessary for the thriving of the country, are we not?
I think that it's a much narrower interpretation that has to be taken, and what Jefferson meant was that there's no state-sponsored religion. The state is not endorsing a religion. That's the separation of church and state. They're not endorsing religiosity or religion. There's no Church of Washington, the Church of the United States. The same way there's the Church of England.
But there is a church with millions of people that endorses one presidential candidate over another.
Michael,
and if that presidential candidate wins, you could say that's that church's president.
You have one constitutional principle, which I'll grant you, the separation of church and state. You also have two other
constitutional principles.
You have two other constitutional principles: freedom of speech and freedom of association. So just because there's a separation of church and state doesn't mean that the individual's right to free speech, free expression, and free association, right, and free exercise.
But hold on, they're not taking the church's right to do that away.
Yes, they are. They're taking away.
No, hold on. If you're going to do that, you can't get tax exempt status, is what they're saying. If you want to be tax exempt, then don't get involved in politics.
And that's wrong, because we'll go back to Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. What did Aristotle say? Man is by its nature a political animal. Try to take morality out of politics in Aristotle and Aquinas, it doesn't work. Okay, in theology and religious philosophy, the polis from the Greek city-states forward and weaved into Christianity, Christian thought and tradition. You can't understand a moral life or a religious life without understanding a moral order to the political. And I think that we have a right under our Constitution, just so much as we have the separation of church and state, but we also have the right to associate with others that are like-minded in our belief system. We have this in political parties, right? But when you have it as a church, churches have historically been tax-exempt organizations, and part of what the churches have done throughout history, throughout the common law days prior to our Constitution, is that the pastors would lead their flocks, and they would lead them in all things, even in political thought. So to take away a tax-exempt status under the 1954 rule was a strictly political decision that ignored the important historical and cultural position that churches have, and all houses of worship. We're talking about mosques, and we're talking about synagogues as well. You know, the rabbi could come out, and the rabbis are very powerful people in Jewish communities. Go to Borough Park. What the rabbi says, go to Borough Park.
My rabbi is very liberal,
and that's right. And maybe your rabbi will take a liberal stance. Maybe your rabbi will choose not to take a stance on these issues, but it gives them the option to do so. Okay.
Right. All right. So he has stopped that. So now they can slam Trump all they want, kiss his butt all they want.